My son chose his wife over me, but I made sure he never forgot who raised him. I watched my son sign the restraining order with shaking hands. His ex-wife had just shown up at my door for the 3rd time that week, screaming that I'd destroyed her life. And you know what? She was right. I did destroy it. But what she didn't know was that I'd do it all over again without hesitation. 2 years ago, my son told me to stay out of his marriage or lose him forever. He chose his wife over me, the woman who raised him alone, the woman who sacrificed everything. Before we dive into this story, I want to hear from you. Have you ever felt replaced by someone you loved? Drop a comment below and let me know where in the world you're watching from. And please hit that like button for me right now and subscribe to my channel. We're building a community of people who know it's never too late to heal and find the truth. Now, back to my story. The dining table stretched between us like an ocean I couldn't cross anymore. 12 years I'd set 3 plates for Sunday dinner. Tonight, there were only 2. My son Derek sat across from me, his jaw tight, his eyes avoiding mine like I was a stranger he'd bumped into at the grocery store. His wife Simone wasn't here. She never came to my house anymore. And apparently, that was my fault. "Mom, we need to talk." His voice was flat, rehearsed. I recognized that tone. It was the same one he'd used when he told me he was dropping out of college to follow Simone to another state. The same one he'd used when he said they were getting married after only 6 months of dating. I'd learned to brace myself when Derek used that voice. "Simone feels like you don't respect our marriage. She feels like you're always criticizing her, always trying to come between us." I opened my mouth to respond, but he held up his hand. "I'm not asking you to explain. I'm telling you how it is. From now on, if you can't treat my wife with respect, then I can't have you in our lives." The room tilted. I gripped the edge of the table so hard my knuckles went white. This was my son, the boy I'd raised alone after his father walked out when he was 3, the boy I'd worked double shifts for, the boy I'd helped with homework until midnight, the boy I'd sacrificed everything for. And he was sitting in my kitchen, in the house I'd bought with my own hands, telling me I wasn't welcome in his life anymore, because of her. "Derek, honey, please listen to me." My voice cracked. I hated how small I sounded. "I've never tried to come between you. I just want what's best for you. Simone quit her job 3 months after you got married. You're working 70 hours a week to pay for that apartment she picked out. You look exhausted every time I see you. I'm your mother. I'm supposed to worry." He stood up, his chair scraping against the floor like nails on a chalkboard. "That's exactly what I'm talking about. You can't let me make my own choices. You can't let me be a man." He left without finishing his dinner. The door closed behind him with a soft click that felt louder than a slam. I sat there in the silence, staring at his untouched plate, and felt something inside me crack wide open. Then I felt something else, something cold and sharp. If my son wanted to choose his wife over me, fine, but I wasn't going to disappear quietly. I wasn't going to be erased from his life like I never mattered. I'd given him everything, and one way or another, I was going to make sure he never forgot that. Derek was 3 years old when his father left us. I remember standing in the doorway of our tiny apartment, watching Raymond load the last box into his car. He didn't even say goodbye to Derek, just looked at me and said, "I never wanted to be a father anyway. This whole thing was a mistake." Then he drove away, and I never saw him again. No child support, no birthday cards, nothing. It was just me and Derek against the world. I was 22 years old and working as a checkout girl at a discount store. My own parents had disowned me when I got pregnant before marriage, so I had no one to turn to. I remember sitting on the bathroom floor that night after Derek fell asleep, crying so hard I thought I'd break apart. But I didn't break. I couldn't. I had a son to raise. So I picked myself up, wiped my face, and made a promise. Derek would never feel abandoned. Derek would never go without. Derek would know he was loved every single day of his life. I worked 2 jobs for the next 15 years. Mornings at the store, nights cleaning office buildings. I slept 4 hours a night if I was lucky. I wore the same 3 outfits for years because every extra dollar went toward Derek's needs. New shoes when his toes cramped, school supplies, a bike for his 10th birthday that I saved 8 months to afford. I missed parent-teacher conferences because I couldn't get time off work. But I stayed up late helping him with his math homework, teaching myself algebra from his textbook so I could explain it to him. I was there, always. When Derek was 16, he made the basketball team. He was so proud. I'd never seen him smile like that. The problem was, the team traveled for games, and there were fees for the uniform, the equipment, the away games. $200 I didn't have. I took out a payday loan with interest rates that should have been illegal. I worked extra shifts until my feet bled into my socks. But Derek got to play. He got to be a normal kid with a normal high school experience. And when he scored the winning point at the championship game, I was there in the stands screaming louder than anyone else. That moment was worth everything. I'd built Derek's entire life with my own 2 hands. Every opportunity he had, every happy memory, every ounce of confidence he carried into adulthood came from me. I wasn't a perfect mother. I was exhausted and broke, and sometimes I snapped at him when I shouldn't have. But I loved him with a fierceness that burned through every sacrifice I made. And now, he was sitting in my kitchen, telling me I didn't matter anymore. Telling me some woman he'd known for less than 2 years was more important than the mother who'd given up her entire life for him. The betrayal tasted like metal in my mouth. I met Simone at Derek's 23rd birthday party. He'd been so excited to introduce us. "Mom, this is Simone. She's amazing. You're going to love her." I wanted to love her. I really did. I shook her hand and smiled, and told her it was nice to meet her. But something felt off from the very beginning, the way she looked around my house with this tight little smile, like she was judging every piece of furniture I'd bought secondhand, the way she barely touched the food I'd spent all day cooking, the way she kept checking her phone while Derek was opening his presents. Within 3 months, they were inseparable. Derek started canceling our Sunday dinners. "Simone wants to try this new restaurant. Simone isn't feeling well, so I'm staying in with her." I told myself it was normal. He was in love. Young couples needed time together. But then he started changing. He traded his comfortable jeans and t-shirts for expensive button-downs Simone picked out. He stopped calling me just to chat. When I asked him how he was doing, his answers got shorter and shorter. "I'm fine, Mom. Everything's fine." 6 months after they met, Derek came to me with news. They were getting married, not engaged. Married. They'd already been to the courthouse. "We didn't want a big fuss," he said, but he wouldn't meet my eyes. I felt like someone had punched me in the chest. My only son had gotten married without telling me, without inviting me. I wasn't there to see him in a suit or to cry happy tears or to hug him afterward. I wasn't there at all. When I asked why he didn't tell me beforehand, he got defensive. Simone thought it would be easier this way. She doesn't like being the center of attention. That's when I started to see the pattern. Every decision Derek made now, Simone was behind it. He quit his job at the warehouse because Simone thought he deserved better. He moved into an apartment twice the rent of his old place because Simone loved the neighborhood. He started talking about going back to school for a degree he'd never mentioned wanting, because Simone thought it would be good for his future. It was always Simone thinks. Simone wants, Simone says. My son had disappeared, and in his place was this hollow version of himself that just repeated whatever his wife told him. I tried to talk to him about it, gently at first. "Derek, honey, are you happy? You seem stressed." He brushed me off. Then I tried being more direct. "You're working yourself to death while Simone stays home all day. That doesn't seem fair." That's when things got ugly. He accused me of being jealous, of trying to control him, of not being able to let him grow up, and maybe I was jealous. Maybe I was angry that this woman had walked into my son's life and made him forget about the person who'd sacrificed everything for him. But I wasn't wrong. Simone was using him, and he was too blind to see it. The phone calls got shorter, then they stopped altogether. I'd call Derek and get his voicemail. I'd text him and wait days for a response. When he did reply, It was always brief. Sorry, been busy. Talk soon. But soon never came. I started seeing his life in pieces through social media. Photos of him and Simone at fancy restaurants I knew he couldn't afford. Posts about weekend trips I was never invited to. Pictures of holiday dinners at her parents' house. My son was living a whole life, and I wasn't part of it anymore. I invited them over for Thanksgiving. I planned the menu for weeks, making all of Derek's childhood favorites. The turkey he loved with extra gravy, the sweet potato casserole I used to make for his birthday, the apple pie that took me 3 tries to get right when he was little. I set the table with the good dishes I'd been saving. I put out fresh flowers. I waited. They never came. At 7 o'clock, 2 hours after dinner was supposed to start, Derek finally texted me. Something came up. Sorry. No explanation. No rescheduling. Just sorry. Christmas was worse. I'd bought Derek a watch I'd been saving for all year. Something nice, something that would last. I drove to their apartment to drop off presents. Simone answered the door. She didn't invite me in, just stood there in the doorway, arms crossed, looking at me like I was a door-to-door salesman. Derek's not here. I could hear the TV in the background. I could see his coat hanging by the door. She was lying right to my face. I left the presents on the doorstep and drove home, with tears blurring my vision so badly I almost ran a red light. I tried to give them space. I tried to respect their marriage, but every time I pulled back, the distance grew wider. I'd see Derek at the grocery store and he'd duck down an aisle to avoid me. I'd run into Simone at the bank and she'd pretend she didn't see me. It was like I'd become invisible, like 23 years of raising my son had been erased overnight. I started having nightmares about showing up at his funeral and not being allowed in, about him having kids I'd never meet, about dying alone while he lived 10 minutes away, not caring. Then came the Sunday dinner that changed everything. The one where Derek told me I wasn't welcome in his life unless I apologized to Simone and promised to stay out of their marriage. I'd listened to him with my heart breaking into smaller and smaller pieces. And when he left my house that night, something shifted inside me. I'd spent my entire adult life bending over backward for my son, sacrificing, accommodating, putting his needs before mine. And what had it gotten me? Nothing. I was alone. I was rejected. I was being punished for loving him too much. Well, if Derek wanted to forget who raised him, I was going to remind him, whatever it took. I spent 3 days writing the letter. Crumpled drafts covered my kitchen table. I wanted to get it right. Not angry, but honest. Not begging, but firm. I needed Derek to understand what he was throwing away. I needed him to see me as more than just the obstacle Simone had painted me to be. I needed him to remember who I was before she showed up and rewrote our entire history. Dear Derek, it began, I'm writing this because you won't answer my calls anymore. I'm writing this because I need you to hear me, even if you don't want to. I'm not asking you to choose between me and your wife. I'm asking you to remember who you were before you met her. I'm asking you to look at your life right now and ask yourself if you're truly happy, or if you're just too proud to admit you made a mistake. I listed everything, every sacrifice I'd made, every time I'd gone without so he could have more, the nights I'd worked until my body gave out, the dreams I'd given up, the relationships I'd never pursued because I was too busy being his mother. I wasn't trying to guilt him. I was trying to show him the truth. I don't regret any of it, I wrote, but I won't be erased either. I won't pretend I don't matter. You can choose to shut me out, but you can't change the fact that I'm the reason you exist. I'm the reason you survived. And someday, when Simone moves on to the next man she can mold into whatever she wants, you'll realize what you lost. I mailed the letter on a Tuesday morning. I didn't expect a response. Part of me didn't even want one. I just needed him to read it, to sit with it, to feel something other than Simone's influence for 5 minutes. For 2 weeks, nothing happened. Then one Saturday afternoon, Derek showed up at my door. He looked terrible, dark circles under his eyes. His shoulders hunched like he was carrying something too heavy. He didn't say hello, just held up the letter. We need to talk. We sat in the living room, the same room where I'd rocked him to sleep as a baby, the same room where I'd helped him with homework, the same room where we'd watched movies together every Friday night until he turned 18. He stared at the letter in his hands, and I watched something crack in his expression. "I'm tired, Mom," he said quietly. "I'm so tired. I work all the time. Simone's always upset about something. Nothing I do is ever enough, and I can't remember the last time I felt like myself." For the first time in 2 years, I saw my real son looking back at me, and I knew this was my chance to get him back. Derek didn't leave Simone that day. I didn't expect him to, but something had shifted. He started calling me again, just once a week at first, always when Simone was out with friends. We'd talk for hours about nothing and everything. He told me about work stress, about how Simone wanted to buy a house they couldn't afford, about how lonely he felt even though he was married. I listened. I didn't criticize. I didn't say, "I told you so," even though every cell in my body wanted to. I just let him remember what it felt like to have someone who truly cared about him. I started inviting him over for lunch on his days off. "Don't tell Simone," he'd say, and I'd nod. "Our secret." Just like when he was little and I'd sneak him candy before dinner. We'd eat sandwiches in my kitchen and he'd relax in a way I hadn't seen in years. His shoulders would drop. He'd laugh at my terrible jokes. He'd help me with small repairs around the house, and for a few hours, we were us again. Mother and son. The team we'd always been before Simone appeared. But I knew it wasn't enough. Derek was stuck. He felt obligated to Simone. He'd made vows. He'd built a life with her, even if that life was making him miserable. He needed a push, something that would show him exactly who Simone really was. So I did something I'm not proud of. I hired someone to follow her, a private investigator, $500 I'd saved for emergencies. I told myself I was protecting my son. I told myself any mother would do the same. The investigator called me 2 weeks later. "You'll want to see this." We met at a coffee shop downtown. He slid a manila envelope across the table. Inside were photos. Simone at lunch with a man I didn't recognize. Simone laughing, leaning close, her hand on his arm. More photos of them going into a hotel together, leaving 3 hours later. The investigator pulled out phone records too. Dozens of calls and texts between Simone and this man. Messages that made it very clear she was cheating on my son. I sat there staring at the evidence, and I felt no satisfaction. Just a sick, heavy sadness. I'd been right about Simone, but being right didn't make this hurt any less. Because I knew what these photos would do to Derek. I knew they'd shatter him. And as much as I wanted him away from her, I didn't want him destroyed. I went home and put the envelope in my desk drawer. I told myself I'd wait. I'd give Simone a chance to come clean on her own. But deep down, I knew I was just deciding when to drop the bomb that would blow up my son's marriage. I kept the envelope for 3 weeks. Every time my phone rang and it was Derek, I thought about telling him. But his voice would sound lighter than it had in months, and I'd swallow the words. He was coming back to me slowly. We were rebuilding. I didn't want to be the one to break him. But then Derek called me on a Thursday night, and I could tell immediately something was wrong. "Mom, can I come over?" He sounded wrecked. "It's important." He showed up 20 minutes later. His eyes were red. He sat at my kitchen table and put his head in his hands. "Simone's pregnant." The words hung in the air between us like smoke. I felt my chest tighten. A baby that would trap him forever, that would tie him to her in a way he could never escape. "Are you happy?" I asked carefully. He laughed, but it was bitter. "I don't know." She's been different lately, distant, always on her phone. She says she's just stressed about the pregnancy, but it feels like more than that. This was the moment. I could feel it. I went to my desk and pulled out the envelope. My hand shook as I set it in front of him. "Derek, there's something you need to see. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." I watched his face as he opened it, watched him go through the photos one by one, watched the color drain from his skin, watched his hands start to tremble. "How long have you known?" His voice was barely a whisper. 3 weeks. I was trying to figure out the right time to tell you. He stood up so fast his chair fell over. 3 weeks? You knew for 3 weeks and you didn't say anything? He was yelling now, and I'd never heard him yell like this. Not at me. I was going to have a baby with her. I was going to be tied to her forever, and you just sat on this? I tried to explain, tried to tell him I was scared of hurting him, but he wasn't listening. He grabbed the envelope and walked out. I heard his car peel out of my driveway, and I stood there in my kitchen, wondering if I'd just saved my son or lost him forever. Derek didn't call for 4 days. When he finally did, his voice was flat, empty. The baby isn't mine. Simone admitted it. She's been seeing that guy for 7 months. She was going to pass the baby off as mine. He paused. I could hear him breathing on the other end of the line. I'm leaving her. I signed the lease on a new apartment today. It's small, but it's mine. Just mine. I felt a rush of relief so strong I had to sit down. I'm proud of you, honey. That took courage. But then he said something that stopped my heart. I'm not calling to thank you, Mom. I'm calling to tell you I need space. From everyone. I trusted you to tell me the truth right away, and you didn't. You made the same choice Simone did. You decided what was best for me instead of letting me make my own decisions. The line went dead. I called back 3 times. He didn't answer. I'd gotten what I wanted. Simone was out of Derek's life, but in the process, I'd pushed him away again. Only this time it was my own fault. Months passed. Long, empty months where I heard nothing from Derek. I drove past his new apartment twice but never stopped. I wanted to give him the space he asked for. I wanted to respect his boundaries. But it was killing me. I'd see his light on at night and wonder what he was doing. If he was eating properly, if he was okay, I'd start to text him 12 times a day and delete every message before sending it. I was losing my mind in the silence. I threw myself into work. I picked up extra shifts. I deep cleaned my house until there wasn't a surface I hadn't scrubbed. I reorganized closets and repainted the guest room and replanted my entire garden. Anything to keep busy. Anything to stop thinking about the fact that my son was 10 minutes away and might as well have been on another planet. I'd saved him from Simone, but I'd lost him anyway. The irony was almost funny. Then one evening, 6 months after our last conversation, there was a knock on my door. I opened it to find Derek standing there with a pizza box and a 6-pack of my favorite soda. He looked different, healthier. There was color in his face again. His eyes were clear. "Can I come in?" he asked. I stepped aside, not trusting myself to speak. We sat on the couch. He opened the pizza box. "It's from that place we used to go to when I was a kid. You remember?" We ate in silence for a while. Then Derek set down his slice and looked at me. "I've been in therapy since the divorce went through." I hadn't known it was finalized. He nodded like he could read my mind. "It's done. Simone got the apartment. I didn't fight her for anything. I just wanted out." He took a breath. "My therapist helped me understand something. You made mistakes, Mom. You should have told me about the affair right away. But you made those mistakes because you loved me. Simone made mistakes because she only loved herself. There's a difference." He told me about the last 6 months, how he'd been working on himself, how he'd made new friends, how he'd reconnected with old ones he'd lost when he was with Simone, how he'd started playing basketball again at the rec center, how he'd remembered what it felt like to be happy. "I blamed you for a lot of things," he said. "Some of them were fair, some of them weren't. But I'm done being angry. I'm done punishing you for caring too much. You're my mom. You're the only person who's never given up on me." We hugged for a long time. I cried into his shoulder like I was the child and he was the parent. "I'm sorry," I whispered, "for everything I did wrong, for holding on too tight, for making choices that weren't mine to make." He pulled back and smiled, the first real smile I'd seen from him in years. "I know, Mom. I know." That night we watched a movie together, just like old times. And for the first time in what felt like forever, I could breathe again. I thought we were past it. I thought Derek and I had healed. But then, 3 months after we'd reconciled, Simone showed up at my door. She looked terrible. Her hair was unwashed, pulled back in a messy ponytail. Her clothes were wrinkled. Her eyes were wild. "You ruined my life," she said. No hello, no preamble, just accusations. I started to close the door, but she shoved her foot in the frame. "You poisoned Derek against me. You hired someone to follow me. You destroyed my marriage." I could have denied it. I could have slammed the door in her face. But something in me snapped. All the anger I'd been holding back for years came flooding out. "I didn't destroy your marriage. You did that yourself. I didn't make you cheat. I didn't make you lie. I didn't make you use my son as a wallet while you ran around with another man. That was all you." She flinched like I'd slapped her. "Derek was never good enough for you. You wanted someone you could control, someone weak. Well, my son isn't weak. He's strong, and he's finally free of you." Simone's face twisted. "You think you won? You think Derek's going to stay close to you forever? He'll meet someone else. He'll build a new life. And you'll be exactly where you are now. Alone, desperate, clinging to a son who's outgrown you." Her words hit like knives, because part of me feared she was right. Part of me had always feared that Derek would leave me behind eventually, that I'd end up alone after giving everything. "Maybe," I said quietly, "but at least I'll know I loved him the right way, without conditions, without using him." "Can you say the same?" She left without another word. I closed the door and leaned against it, shaking. I called Derek, told him what happened. He showed up an hour later with a police report. "I'm filing a restraining order. Simone's been harassing me too, showing up at my work, sending me 50 texts a day. She won't let go." He looked at me seriously. "Mom, I need to know. Did you hire someone to follow her?" I could have lied, but we were past that now. "Yes, I did. I was trying to protect you." Derek was quiet for a long time. Then he sighed. "I'm not going to thank you for that. It wasn't your place. But I'm not going to hate you for it either. You were right about her. That's what kills me. You were right, and I wouldn't listen." He ran his hands through his hair. "I wasted 3 years of my life on someone who never loved me. I pushed away the one person who actually gave a damn, and I can't get that time back." I reached out and squeezed his hand. "You're here now. That's what matters." Over the next few weeks, things got worse before they got better. Simone violated the restraining order twice. She posted lies about me on social media. She called my work trying to get me fired. She showed up at Derek's apartment and pounded on the door until the neighbors called the police. It was like watching someone unravel in real time. Finally, her parents got involved. They apologized to Derek. They took Simone back to their home in another state for help. The harassment stopped. The nightmare was over. Or so I thought. Derek started dating again about a year after his divorce. I met his new girlfriend, Cassidy, over Sunday dinner. I was nervous. Terrified, actually. What if I hated her? What if she was another Simone? What if Derek thought I was being controlling again? But the moment Cassidy walked into my house, I knew she was different. She brought flowers. She helped me set the table without being asked. She asked me questions about myself, not just to be polite, but because she genuinely wanted to know me. During dinner, I watched how she was with Derek. She didn't talk over him or correct him or try to change him. She listened when he spoke. She laughed at his jokes. She touched his arm gently when she could tell he was getting stressed about something at work. And Derek looked at her with something I hadn't seen in his eyes since he was a little boy. Peace, joy, real happiness. After dinner, while Derek was loading the dishwasher, Cassidy helped me wrap up leftovers. "I know Derek's relationship with his mom is complicated," she said softly, "but I want you to know I'm not trying to replace you. I'm just trying to add to his life, not take anything away." I felt tears prick my eyes. "Thank you," I whispered. "You have no idea what that means to me." Over the next few months, I got to know Cassidy better. She was a nurse. She volunteered at a shelter on weekends. She was saving up to go back to school for her master's degree. She had her own dreams, her own life, her own identity. She didn't need Derek to complete her. She wanted him because she loved him, not because she needed someone to fix or control or use. And Derek flourished with her. He laughed more. He looked healthier. He talked about the future with excitement instead of dread. One Sunday, after Cassidy left, Derek stayed behind to help me with some yard work. We were pulling weeds in the garden when he said, "I'm going to marry her, Mom. Not yet, but someday." I sat back on my heels and looked at him. "Are you sure?" He nodded. "I've never been more sure of anything. Cassidy makes me want to be better, not because she demands it, but because she makes me believe I already am. That's the difference. Simone made me feel like I was never enough. Cassidy makes me feel like I'm exactly who I'm supposed to be." I stood up and hugged him tight. "Then I'm happy for you, truly." And I meant it, because this time, I could see it wasn't about me versus her. It wasn't about losing my son. It was about him finding himself, finding happiness, finding someone who treated him the way he deserved to be treated. I'd spent so long fighting to keep Derek close that I'd forgotten the real goal wasn't to keep him. It was to raise him to be strong enough to stand on his own. And watching him now, confident and happy and whole, I realized I'd actually succeeded, even if the path to get here had been messy and painful and full of mistakes. It was Cassidy's idea for me to go to therapy. She didn't say it in a mean way. We were having coffee at her apartment, just the two of us, and she was telling me about her own therapist. "I started going after my dad died," she explained. "I thought I was fine, but I was carrying so much guilt and anger. Therapy helped me sort through it. It taught me how to love people without suffocating them." She looked at me kindly. "Maybe it could help you too." With everything you've been through with Derek's, I'd resisted at first. I didn't think I needed therapy, but something about the way Cassidy said it, without judgment, just genuine care, made me reconsider. So I found a therapist, a woman named Dr. Brennan, who had kind eyes and a direct way of speaking that I appreciated. In our sessions, I talked about Derek, about raising him alone, about the sacrifices I'd made, about how terrified I'd been when Simone came into his life, about how betrayed I'd felt when he chose her over me. "Why do you think you felt betrayed?" Dr. Brennan asked during our fourth session. I'd been expecting the question, but it still hit hard. "Because I gave him everything," I said, "and she gave him nothing, but he picked her anyway." Dr. Brennan nodded. "You gave Derek everything. That's true. But did you give it freely, or did you give it with the expectation that he'd owe you something in return?" I opened my mouth to argue, but the words died in my throat, because she was right. Somewhere along the way, I'd started keeping score. I'd started believing that my sacrifices earned me a permanent place at the center of Derek's life. Over the next few months, I learned a lot about myself. I learned that I'd used Derek to fill the hole his father left, that I'd made him my entire identity because I was too scared to build my own, that I'd clung so tight because I was terrified of being abandoned again. Dr. Brennan helped me see that loving someone doesn't mean owning them, that being a good mother means preparing your child to leave, not finding ways to keep them close. It was painful work. Some sessions I left feeling raw and exposed, but slowly I started to change. One evening I invited Derek over, just him. I'd been planning what to say for weeks. We sat in my living room with tea and I took a deep breath. "I need to apologize to you, for real this time. Not for protecting you from Simone, but for all the ways I tried to control your life before her. For making you feel guilty for growing up. For putting my needs ahead of yours and calling it love. You deserved better from me, and I'm sorry." Derek's eyes filled with tears. "Mom, you don't have to." "Yes, I do," I interrupted gently. "You were right. I made mistakes, big ones. And I need you to know I see that now. I'm working on it. I'm trying to be better." He hugged me, and in that moment I felt something shift. A weight I'd been carrying for years finally lifted. We were going to be okay. Really okay. Derek proposed to Cassidy on a Saturday morning in my backyard. He'd asked if he could use the garden for something special, and I'd said yes without asking questions. I watched from my kitchen window as he got down on one knee next to the rose bushes I'd planted when he was 10. Cassidy said yes, laughing and crying at the same time. They came inside afterward, glowing, and showed me the ring. "We want to get married here," Derek said, "if that's okay with you. In the backyard, small ceremony, just family and close friends." I helped Cassidy plan the wedding. It was simple and beautiful. White chairs in rows on the grass, flowers everywhere, twinkle lights strung between the trees. The day of the wedding was perfect, sunny and warm, with a light breeze. I wore a blue dress Cassidy had helped me pick out. I did my makeup carefully, hands shaking because I couldn't believe this was real. My son was getting married, and this time, I was here. I was part of it. I mattered. Derek asked me to walk him down the aisle. "You're the one who raised me," he said. "You should be the one to give me away." I cried through the entire ceremony, happy tears this time. I watched Derek and Cassidy exchange vows they'd written themselves, vows about partnership and respect and choosing each other every day. I watched them kiss as husband and wife. I watched them dance their first dance to a song that made everyone smile. And I felt nothing but joy, pure, uncomplicated joy. At the reception, Derek gave a speech. He thanked Cassidy for loving him. He thanked her parents for welcoming him into their family. Then he turned to me. "And Mom," his voice cracked, "thank you for never giving up on me, even when I gave you every reason to. Thank you for working 2 jobs so I could have a childhood. Thank you for teaching me what real love looks like, even when I was too stubborn to see it. You sacrificed everything to raise me, and I know I didn't always appreciate it. But I do now. Everything good in me came from you." The room was silent except for the sound of people crying. I couldn't speak, couldn't move. Derek walked over and hugged me tight. "I love you, Mom," he whispered. "I never stopped, even when I was angry, even when I pushed you away. You're the strongest person I know." I held on to him like I had when he was small, and I felt 20 years of fear and pain and worry finally release. This was what I'd been fighting for all along. Not to keep him, just to know that he knew, that he understood, that he would never forget who raised him. The months after the wedding were the happiest of my life. Derek and Cassidy came over every other Sunday. Sometimes we cooked together. Sometimes we just sat in the backyard and talked. Cassidy was pregnant now, and I got to go to doctor's appointments with them. I got to help set up the nursery. I got to be part of their joy without trying to control it or make it about me. Dr. Brennan had been right. Letting go didn't mean losing Derek. It meant loving him better. One afternoon, Cassidy and I were folding baby clothes while Derek assembled a crib in the next room. "You know," Cassidy said softly, "Derek told me about everything that happened with Simone, about how hard it was between you two." I tensed, waiting for judgment. But she just smiled. "I'm glad you fought for him. He needed someone to see what was happening, even if he couldn't see it himself. You saved him. And yeah, maybe you made some mistakes along the way, but your heart was always in the right place. That's what matters." I felt tears slip down my cheeks. I was so scared I'd lose him forever, that he'd hate me for interfering. Cassidy reached over and squeezed my hand. "Derek could never hate you. You're his mom. You're his hero. He talks about you all the time, about how strong you are, how you built a life for him out of nothing, how you never gave up, no matter how hard things got. Our daughter is lucky. She's going to have the most amazing grandmother." A daughter. They were having a little girl. Derek had told me last week, and I'd cried for an hour straight. Happy tears. Grateful tears. I was going to be a grandmother. I was going to get to hold this tiny person and love her and watch her grow. And this time, I was going to do it right. I was going to be the grandmother who supported without smothering, who loved without demanding, who gave freely without keeping score. 3 months later, on a cold February morning, I got the call. Cassidy was in labor. I met Derek at the hospital. He was pacing the waiting room, nervous and excited and terrified all at once. "What if I mess up?" he asked me. What if I'm not a good dad? I took his face in my hands and looked him in the eyes. You're going to be an amazing father, because you know what it feels like to be loved completely, and that's all any child needs. 6 hours later, I held my granddaughter for the first time. She was perfect. Tiny and pink and utterly perfect. They'd named her Nora. I traced my finger along her impossibly small hand, and she gripped it tight. Derek stood next to me, watching. She looks like you did when you were born, I whispered. Same nose, same chin. He put his arm around my shoulders. I hope she's as strong as you, Mom, as fierce, as willing to fight for the people she loves. I looked up at him, this man I'd raised, this father he'd become. You turned out pretty good, kiddo, he laughed, only because of you. We stood there together, 3 generations in one room, and I felt complete. The road to get here had been long and painful. I'd made mistakes, big ones. I'd held on too tight and pushed too hard and tried to control things that weren't mine to control, but I'd also loved with everything I had. I'd fought when it mattered. I'd sacrificed and struggled and refused to give up, and in the end, my son hadn't forgotten who raised him. He remembered. He appreciated it. He loved me for it. Not because he owed me, not because he felt obligated, but because when you strip away all the complications and hurt and misunderstandings, what remained was simple. I was his mother. He was my son. And that bond forged in those early years when it was just us against the world was stronger than anything that tried to break it. If you've ever felt replaced by someone you love, I want you to know something. Your love matters. Your sacrifices matter. Even when it feels like nobody sees them, they matter. It might take time for the people you love to understand what you gave up for them. They might make mistakes. They might choose the wrong people. They might hurt you in ways you never thought possible. But if you loved them right, if you loved them true, they'll find their way back. Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but eventually. And when they do, all that pain will have been worth it. Because love isn't about keeping people close. It's about making them strong enough to choose you, even when they're free to walk away. My son chose his wife over me once, but he also chose to come back. He chose to forgive. He chose to remember. And now, watching him hold his daughter with the same fierce love I held him with all those years ago, I know I did something right. I raised a man who knows what real love looks like, and that's the greatest gift I could have ever given him. Thank you for watching this story. If it touched your heart, please hit that like button and subscribe to hear more true family stories. And in the comments below, tell me, have you ever had to fight for a relationship that mattered? I read every single comment, and your story could help someone else who's going through the same thing. Remember, you're not alone. We're all in this together.